Day 24, Saturday, April 18th. And as always, Pajama Party Saturday. I'm joined by Ethan. But Kate, you know, he was just saying before, I'm just literally just as we were going live, he's just going, Maria, I'm too terrified to break my
I am. I had an incident when I was younger where I like plucked them myself and somehow removed like half of a whole eyebrow and like still no idea how it happened. Oh.
Was alcohol involved, love?
Afterwards, to cope with it, absolutely. During the incident, possibly, because like I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was younger and would be getting ready to go out, I would do the whole wine in the shower situation.
Yeah.
You know, you're having a shower, tossing back a couple glasses of bubbly, and then you get out and start flat ironing your hair, and whoops, you kind of cooked a piece of it and it kind of just flakes off. But, you know, we've all been there.
Right. I've never quite gone as far as wine in the shower, but hey, look, there's a first time for everything.
If you're really, everyone, if you're really in a rush getting ready to go out and you still need to have a few drinks, do not be afraid to take the wine in the shower. I will suggest a sippy cup that has one of those little lips, like a keep cup or something, is a perfect shower wine glass. The water from the shower does not get in, and you still get the wine in your mouth.
Okay, so I think for people that don't know, Ethan was a professional dancer for some time. Is this one of those secret life of dancing dancers moments?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Like, this is definitely the, you know, you've wrapped up a show at 11. You're like sprinting back to the hotel room to shower and change to go out. Because like never in the life of a professional dancer do you roll out of bed before God even knows. Like, if I ever saw 8 a.m., it was from the other side.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I've completely lost my train of thought of where I was going before. It was the eyebrows that threw me. Oh no, here we go. Pajama Party Saturday. I hope everyone's know with their PJs.
Yes,
today
I definitely sleep in this.
I've gone completely grey mail today. I've got grey mail pants, I've got grey mail shirt, because I mean to be fair, these are some of my PJs, but of course it goes perfectly with one's Noro cowl, and I have to have everything. You've even got complete bed hair. Whilst I've showered, I haven't done the hair this morning. In fact, I didn't even put any makeup on. You've only just got a touch of lippy, so I don't look like
I do actually wake up like this.
Yeah. I don't. Well, I do. I didn't look like this morning, but
yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna lie. The thing I have on my lap is too warm, so I do actually have to take the sweater off, everyone.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I'm going to die of heat exhaustion from my knitting project.
Yes. There we go. So, well, let's get on to that. Let's launch, because both of us have had very, very busy and productive weeks.
Yes.
So let's launch into our works in progress. Let's start there, and then we've finished things as well. So
yes.
How is Extra Texture going?
So Extra Texture, everyone, I am in the last 8 rows of the cable repeats. So I have switched colors for the final time. Now, to show you this now, I can't see what I'm doing, so shout out if I've randomly cut off something.
Okay.
So I started off with the blue and blue. I switched to this lovely blue and cream marl, and now I am in the parchment and curiosity phase of finishing this guy up. So I only have one more cable cross to go, and another about 8 rows of non-cable knitting, which feels like I've actually really plowed through the second half of this project.
Also,
I did choose intentionally to make the second largest size, partially because I do like people to be able to try on some of the garments I make. And, you know, a lot of the stuff I make does not necessarily end up at a size that is really reasonable for most people to try on. So I think with this one, having gone for the second to largest size, it gives a lot of flexibility for people to see what the different sizes of ease are going to look like on them.
Exactly, because it is one of those sweaters as well, where if you're somebody who is built like you or Malcolm, you know, tall and lean, that you're actually able to sort of see what will the swing element of the sweater look like. But if you're someone that's built a little bit more like Deb and I, you can actually see how much positive ease do we require for it to be positive. Yeah, that too, Deb, that too.
Everyone, I don't have breasts, It is widely considered a major failing of mine, but there's nothing I can do about it.
Well, it is looking fantastic because the sleeves are all worked in at the same time as well. So you've already completed those, obviously. So
no, I have not completed the sleeves.
Oh,
there is actually a sleeve,
aren't they? They're a short, truncated.
They are a short, twisted rib sleeve. So after I finish this next 8 or 9 rows of knitting, then I'm going to launch into roughly 3 inches, or for those of you who use an actual measurement system, 12 centimeters of ribbing in the twisted rib at the end, just to cap it off. Oh, can I tell you the pattern? I don't know if I can. I can't type. But
hold on. Hold the phone, caller. Hold the
Sorry, friends.
Yeah, she who's got the laptop over here will do it. It's extra texture, isn't it?
It is extra texture. Okay. And if some of you are feeling like you're having a hallucinatory moment, Stephen always releases multiple things using the same stitch pattern. So this is the same as the Cabled Bliss shawl. There's a hat from several years ago that uses the same texture pattern. His cabled shorts, which I don't necessarily recommend any of you make, despite the fact that they would be quite a creative piece of work.
Well, and it's actually quite good because what Stephen does is actually going to dovetail beautifully into what we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But it's so I've just gone and popped the link for extra texture in there, so that's really good. Well, I have been really busy too. So in terms of my work in progress, my Rambler sweater, and I'm going to put this up. So look, we have a
look at that sleeve.
I know. Now I've been up since 6 a.m. And I was so determined to get this done for today. But as you can see, I'm into the ribbing now.
Beautiful.
And, I do want to do. Where's my?
Now, do you use those little round needles instead of magic looping?
I have a set of interchangeables.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hold on, I'm just pulling out what I need here.
From your usual project bag.
I know, and I was sort of like, Ethan and I were chatting before we got started, and I'm getting all my props ready, and these are the one things I didn't get ready. That's not. Oh, where did that come from? Okay, that can go back in the bag. Right, there we go. So that's the 3 bits of colour that I have left over for the colour work. So what I am planning to do in this ribbing at the end. So what I use, for me is, I vary. Depending on the project, sometimes I use DPN, sometimes I use Magic Loop. When it comes to techniques and needles, I'm a whore. I will just whatever I feel like at the time.
Good.
Whatever gives me good looping is where
we don't believe in slut shaming for any sort of project use.
No. So, and in this particular instance, I do have a set of Addy Turbos interchangeable, so I've got which I've had for a number of years, and they are the exceptionally short tipped.
Yes, the they have shorts and longs. I have the short and the turbos.
Yes,
and these are the basics.
Yes, so these are short tips, and I do find them, and this is I think only a 20 centimeter cable, so I do find them exceptionally good.
Mm-hmm.
For sleeve work, and I just rip through sleeves much more quickly. So in this particular instance, that's what I felt like doing. And I started the sleeve. I done a few rows on the sleeve the other day, and I've pretty much done most of this yesterday. It hasn't taken long at all. And this morning,
I actually find sleeves to be the fastest part usually. Personally, I know a lot of people are big believers in Sleeve Island, but for me, it's always a very small island.
And
I'm
just going to add a color at the end of the ribbing. I'll probably what I'll do is do 2 rows of each color, and I'll probably actually change the order around and actually go Norrow Cove and Deering, because I think the Deering at the end on the edge to
use the Deering for the bind off as well.
Yes, use the Deering for the bind off, and it will I just think it'll give it a little pop at the end. It will just like an exclamation point. So that's the plan at this stage for that. So that's where I'm at there. And so hopefully, with the weekend, and we've obviously social calendar is, quite light. I'll get the second.
What do you mean?
I know. I'll get the second sleeve knocked off, and then I'll just be onto the body, which And then once I jump into the body, I'll be able to show everybody what I'll be doing with that A-line work. So so that's there. And in fact, for any newbies that have popped in that have not been, I'll put the. Now I did mention, actually, I think it was yesterday, Ethan. I was saying to people, I've had a couple of people who have cast this on now and a few questions. It's really interesting, being yourself, because you do tech editing.
Yes.
One of the things that I have definitely noticed with this pattern, obviously English, it was translated. So there is some really quirky little things in there from translation. And so as I was saying to people, there are some certain, and also to the patterns brand spanking new, it's free, not a lot of people have knit it. So I'm picking that she will massage it as she goes.
Do some updates.
Yeah, do some updates. So I have noticed a couple of little quirky.
A fun little fact about knitting. So most knitting terms aren't standard globally, as you and I both know from having knit from patterns from all over the world. But more importantly, most knitting terms are technically defined as slang. So if you are doing pattern translation, anyone at home who decides to jump in on this, or anyone who does tech editing, you'll often find that a lot of the terminology used is impossible to locate in any sort of, standardized dictionary. So when you're looking for a lot of things, unless the culture and language that you're going into has like a hefty knitting tradition, you can find all the words in German, and German words for sewing and knitting are extremely standardized and literal in a shocking way. You're like, oh my. You have to say it exactly like that in those word order. Yes, in German you do, because if not, it doesn't make any sense. But a lot of Italian terms are very specific, even to the province where people are from.
Dialect.
They'll be in the dialect. No, exactly. So lots of translated knitting patterns. Always be a little extra patient with the designer, because knitting in English makes about as much sense as doing anything in English.
And that's been one of the things that I've just sort of noticed with this. So there are a couple of quirks. So if anyone, so the first thing I said yesterday is if you're casting it on, get down to the last of the increasing for the yoke, and then that's when the first quirk is that I picked up. So and feel free to message me and I can let you know what that is. I have mentioned it in previous videos, so I won't rehash again here. So that's where I'm at with that. I have also finished a thing, and I'll show you mine. I'll show you mine, and then you can show me yours. So I finished the thing I showed everyone the other day. This is what I've been working on for my son Hugo.
Ooh, look at that tweed.
Yeah, and this is in Lodge. And obviously I haven't got any buttons, so there's no buttons on it yet. And there's no hood. It was a hooded, it's called a hooded put over for men. There was no, I didn't do the hood because I didn't have enough yarn. And
as we all know, hoods eat yarn left, right, and center.
Absolutely. So I had to crack into the last ball that I had to finish it. Actually, for the neckline, I haven't even blocked it yet. That's actually one of today's jobs. What I have is I've kept that last ball because my son is 12, but he is growing like a weed. And I mean, I know this looks massive, but this is what he wanted. He wanted like a sloppy Joe. But I've kept the last ball because I know that I've had to truncate the sleeves from the pattern because, again, he's only 12. He hasn't even hit puberty or anything yet. I just know that the growth spurt will happen, and that extra ball I can unravel those cuffs and then add a couple of extra inches into the sleeves. So then hopefully he'll get a couple of seasons out of this before it gets made obsolete by the rapidity of a rapidly growing teenage boy. And the other thing I finished was this just little crochet coat.
Ooh, so cute.
Yeah, so this was part of my chat with Sophia the other day. And of course that is
crocheting. It's a mystery to me still.
Yeah, I just love this stitch because it's the easiest stitch in the world to do. So that's what I've been up to. But anyway, the Alaska pullover. One must.
So everyone, I have good news and bad news. The good news is I actually took my measurements and checked against the pattern before I did the pattern. The other good news is the designer Camille Descoteaux has recently released an update. So if you are going to cast on this pattern, she has refined the measurements, smoothed out some of those quirks that Marie has mentioned. I don't know. See, on my screen right now, it looks like I'm pointing at you.
You
But
are pointing at me, yeah.
okay, so I just want to make sure that everyone sees them. Marie mentioned those quirks about some patterns. So there were a few quirks to the Alaska pattern, but the new release of it has cleaned up a little bit of the sizing and some of the measurements. Turns out her sleeve measurements for the size I knit were not quite correct. And it also turns out that my forearms have grown nearly 6 centimeters each from excessive amounts of CrossFit.
So in width or in length?
In width.
In width. Just checking. I just wanted to make sure that
in width, the length,
or anything.
perfect. And to be clear, I did modify this pattern. I added quite a bit of length to it because it's meant to be very, there's my head. It's meant to be very cropped. And I don't really do cropped sweaters. It's not my thing. So I always add length. I'm very pleased with how the color work along the bottom. This is unblocked, has turned out.
Yeah, the color is beautiful.
I will warn everyone, when you're doing this, do place markers between each repeat. Again, as I've said before, it's very long repeats of stitches with very random seaming at first. And because you're making these beautiful silhouettes of pine trees, basically, the actual chart does not really resemble the finished object. It's an interesting thing because the chart is so squared off. It doesn't give you a great idea of the picture that you're making. So it's very hard when you're establishing this color work to really see what's going on. And I do recommend catching your floats once or twice per round in each repeat as you go at first, okay? You mimic that same beautiful color work in a smaller format around the edge of the sleeve. I, of course, did a sewn tubular bind off, the Elizabeth Zimmerman Classic, on the edges here. That gives it that beautiful flat edge perspective. And as you can see from me holding this up versus the size of my forearm, clearly the forearm does not go into this sleeve at all, because they are 3/4 length sleeves. So, you know, a little bit of a hiccup at the end of the pattern. Now, to be clear, everyone, this would have fit if I had not gotten bigger. So I am to blame, not the pattern in this case. The beautiful situation here is by Camille Descoteaux, as mentioned. I did make a second modification to it where I knit the collar in a contrasting color.
Oh no, have you redone that? You were talking about redoing that.
You know, I did not end up redoing it. To quote our good friend, Mr. Stephen Berg, no one is going to notice it riding by on a horse. So there was absolutely no point in redoing it. And the good news is it fits Neve, Deb's daughter, and my self-proclaimed stepdaughter quite well. So this is going to go on to be a beautiful shop sample when we all have a chance to get back together again and in Outlaw HQ, and then to be Neve's for God knows how long, because she too is growing like a weed. Now, someone a little earlier in the chat asked for a great basic circular sweater for a woman. I would recommend Flax or Flax by
Flax. I'll go and get that for everybody.
Thank you. I think that's the perfect starting point. The instructions are really clear. It's a free pattern. We all love the people from Tin Can Knits. I am sure 90% of you in the chat have made a love note because that was the sweater du jour. God bless them. I know you have. I know you have. So there is absolutely nothing easier than going through that flax sweater. It has a great little garter stitch detail on the sleeve. It teaches you step by step how to knit a sweater in the round. And the people behind Tin Can Knits are just the loveliest. most wonderful human beings.
Yeah, and it's I mentioned yesterday I've started over on the Speakeasy a thread which is actually literally stuff like this. So it is if you haven't jumped into the Speakeasy thread yet, there's a picture there with me with some sunglasses, and it's a thread specifically for you guys to put your favorite patterns like this, those ones that you keep going back to again and again and again, whether it be a pattern or a designer, because sometimes you get into Ravelry and it is literally trying to find the proverbial needle in a haystack, and sometimes all you want to do is just narrow or refine that search down. And if you're actually able to refine it down to projects that people here within your own community are knitting all the time, it means that if you come into you have trouble or you become a bit unstuck, that you're actually able to go back to the community and say, hey, look, I'm trying to knit this. How do you guys how do you deal with this? And hopefully there'll be somebody who is able to help you out with that. So yeah, and flax is it is a fantastic beginner one there. Right?
Basic comes in a DK weight version or light worsted, depending on what you've got at home. It also can be done, as I said, there's Flax Light, which is linked on the main Flax page, so you don't need to put both in. Flax Light is for 4-ply or fingering weight, and they both produce a really wonderful, well-fitting sweater. There's also Flax Mini. It's sized for people who are tiny, all the way up to the largest sizes available, and it gives you instructions how to make adjustments to like the sleeve width and other stuff, so you get a really good fit.
Yeah.
It is part of their basic series that includes rye. They're all named after grains. You're welcome, everyone. Rye and I think wheat that are socks and a hat, which is all part of their knitting basic series, where they use really simple in the round patterns to
the simple collection. It's called
Simple Collection. Thank you.
Simple Collection. Shall I pop? Oopsie. Let's go back to that, Marie. I'll put the link up for that as well. I'm actually having technology and I mean, look how far one has come in such a short time. Oh, go me. Right.
Simply amazing. Especially as I still have no idea what I'm doing. Deb and Marie set this up. I just show up and look like this.
Yeah, he just turns up and looks fabulous. Deborah and I do all the work before he gets here.
God bless them.
So one of the things that I had down today, honestly, you want to see, that's why I have the camera just showing this much here, because the rest of it is chaos around me. One of the things that I thought we could talk about today, and Ethan and I have touched on it before, is about how, we've talked a lot about the patterns that we've directly knitted to, but sometimes that we actually take different themes and swatching, and like you mentioned before about that flax cardigan, the flax sweater, is completely...
it's a beautiful neutral.
And the thing is when you find a pattern like that, and I actually did that was either this week or last week. I can see they're all melding together. But I talked about
1 week.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things I talked about was I had a whole bunch of sweaters that I'd done for my husband over the years that we've been together. And I talked about sort of gauge and taking his measurements, because it's interesting because like Ethan is into CrossFit, my husband is a powerlifter. And so, of course, body shapes change, particularly around extremities and limbs. And I got to a point that using standardized patterns for him just weren't working anymore. So I needed to create basic shapes for him to be able to create sweaters. So I just talked about the very simple schematics of a drop-shouldered sweater. So from that, which is where I wanted to go from there, was with you. Oh gosh, my tummy's just rumbled. I hope that didn't come up on the camera.
Did you not get crumpets in this morning?
I've had nothing to eat yet this morning, but I have had 3 mugs of coffee. So
I've had 3 mugs of coffee and 3 crumpets and a banana. What?
Yeah, but see, the thing is that I don't do all the CrossFit that you do, so I don't have the avenue to burn it all off. Let's put it that way. Right. So I've gone and pulled out a number of
oh yes, I have
dictionaries, and that's the thing with when it comes, and actually this one is perfect. This one is perfect because this one actually shows the sweater that I put up the other way. So see the seed ribbing it's got there?
Yeah.
So I did a sweater for my husband in a bulky yarn. In fact, it's what is Southland bulky now, in that exact shape. So, I mean, obviously not ribbing. And I just did the whole thing
In the seed ribbon.
in the seed ribbing because I did that seed ribbing and I thought, it's actually, it's a 2x2 rib offset, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And
not really a lot of purling.
No, well, no, it's just, I mean, purling, to be fair, purling doesn't bother me, but I just loved it because it's completely reversible. It's a really lovely fabric. And at the time that I was knitting the sweater that I was doing, fisherman rib was like quite a big deal. And if anyone out there has ever knit fisherman's rib, yeah, no, that I'm not fond of. It's, yeah.
I'd much rather brioche than fisherman's rib. I'm not going to lie, everyone.
Yeah, not fond. Anyhow, so that ribbing for me, from a style perspective,
classic,
still had that kind of fisherman rib feel without wanting to stab your eyes out with needles after you've done sort of
10 20
centimeters. So one of the things that I can't recommend enough is if you've got, I mean, these are all the ones that I've got here are quite modern. I didn't dig them out because they're right in the back of my cupboard, but I've got a whole bunch of old Montricot. These stitch dictionaries have been around forever.
Now, do you have any of the Barbara G. Walker ones?
No, I don't.
I believe that here in town at Tauranga Library and possibly Hallswell as well here in Christchurch, if any of you watching are local, that they have the good old, if you're ever in the need, the 5-volume stitch dictionaries of Barbara G. Walker. Yeah. They are thick as a tome, and she has separated them out over time into lace and cables and texture, and yeah, you have to see it to believe it. She's a witch.
I love them though. I just love them because
I love them as well.
Yeah, and there is something quite. So I mean, this is a really. So I've just got literally been digging around in scraps. So first, I'm going to start off with two because I do. If I'm going to do a large adult project, particularly if it's one that doesn't have the amount of positive ease I'm generally used to. Can you hear my dog? Hey mate, can you sit down, please? There you go. Oh, there you go. That's everything we bump. That's the big dog. That's what happens when 116 kilos of canine tries to do. They don't do 3-point turns.
Yeah, no.
Right. Where was I? Projects.
Swatches.
I if it doesn't have a lot of positive ease or it's not like a yarn that I use all the time and I know where my gauge is going to go with it, and it's a new yarn, I will actually swatch. So these are a really couple of good, and this is a really good example. So this is a swatch that I did for my Lizzie cardigan, which I've worn, and we've got that lovely little lace motif. And this is another one here, which I actually swatched, and I haven't knitted it yet, but yes, it's the right way around. That one there, just with that sort of nice, that camera's going to go west. There we go. Stay. Is that one there? And I love being able to play around with stuff like that or jump in with these stitch dictionaries and actually just do stuff like this to see what things look like, because they then enable me to, and what's this? Yeah, see, there's another one that I've played around with.
Yeah, no, I am a big fan of swatching. I have a disturbing number of swatches. Some of them are organized. Ooh, yeah. And you know those punch ring holders?
Yeah.
That clip open and closed. I have actually, over the years, started stringing all of my swatches with little tags on them, because I am like type A neurotic #1, everyone, just to be clear, right? Who can possibly believe this? I do take all of my swatches and string them onto those things by, this is where it gets really out of hand. I do it by yarn thickness, brand, and cable, like stitch pattern. So I tend to do a lot of cable development as a designer, and then like most designers out there, you can go Google 100 interviews that are more interesting than me talking. They will all tell you that you swatch way more than you ever use, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I've got probably 40 or 50 developed cables that are charted and swatched, and I just haven't figured out what to do with them yet, because you're in between projects, or if you're like me and you do a lot of sample knitting, I find that swatches are kind of a nice break as well. Like if you don't want to cast on and make a whole new thing, and you've done lots of sample knitting over the years, I'm not telling you anything new, but you're still hopeful for that next project.
Yeah.
What do? You cast on and swatch. And next week, I'm going to bring 2 to 4 swatches with me for our Saturday morning party, to show people some planning I'm doing for some great ideas for modern basics without them being boring, because that's
great. Yeah.
This is kind of the thing I think that we're talking about too, is where you take stuff, simple shapes, you apply the work from these stitch dictionaries to them, and you end up with a much more elevated garment that doesn't necessarily take any more work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to that end, and I have done some preparation, and she's not going to be able to find it now after all of the preparation. Yes, she is. Ha ha ha. Yes, she is. And a really good example of that, because essentially that's what a lot of designers do. So, like for example,
we all do.
So this is another. And you can see because it's quite faded now. So that was when I first started playing around with that mosaic tessellating sort of thing, and that's essentially the stuff that it turns into. It's for me, it's a theme that I do again and again and again. And Stephen West, as you said, he goes down those themes again and again.
Bit of a rabbit hole,
Also too, I think as knitters as well. I don't know. I'm not very experimental in the sense that I don't bounce around with a huge number of designers. Hence the reason why I set up that thread on the Speakeasy, because I keep going. I'm a comfort knitter, so I will go back to the same designers again and again and again.
No, I'm not going to lie. I've got a pretty limited window of designers. You can pretty much go through my patterns and see it's Jared Flood, Veronique Avery, Julie Hoover, Nora Gone, the occasional Gudrun Johnston moment, because that woman has an eye for color work coming out left, right, and center, Stephen West, and Hiroko Payne, and that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up Nora, because
knitting nature.
No, and Ethan and I, when we talked about several weeks ago about who were our sort of design inspirations. Nora was my first full-on designer crush.
Yes, completely. She almost tricks you into doing things that you don't think you could do otherwise.
Absolutely. And she is she's obvious. And so Knitting Nature, so this book here, I know I've got the links for these, so I'm going to put these up in a second. So unfortunately, all the patterns in this book aren't available separately on Ravelry. You have to get the book. But when I pop the link up to the book page, you will actually see on there, on the left-hand side of the page, it says where you can search in your libraries. So a number of libraries I do know have this book. This book would be, at least, 12 or 15 years old, I think.
It's got to be 2006.
Oh, easily. Hold on, I'll tell you in a second when I have a look on the inside. 2006. Well done, you. But just what we were talking about, and I'm just going to open this up. This one's called The Branching Aran Guernsey. So there it is there. As you can see, gorge.
So beautiful.
But what I wanted to show you on the facing page was she's gone and put in this. And now look, there is her schematic. It's a classic drop shoulder.
Yeah.
What I showed, that's what it is. And this is what I'm saying. So if you haven't purchased or you don't have a classic drop shoulder, that's what that is. Now, you do not need to go into the intricate cable work if you choose not to. If you just decide that you want to stick with the schematic and do that, you can. But what I love about stuff like this is that, her cabling is so... She doesn't follow the traditional... Now, I don't suppose you've got it handy, have you?
I have it on Kindle. So I have the Knitted Gone. Whoa, sorry everyone, that went sideways. I have the Nora Gone's Knitted Cable Source Book, which is the perfect companion piece to go with the exactly what you're talking about right now. She has in that book, you can get that at almost every library in New Zealand, because I have gone to no fewer than 4 and found it,
Yeah.
including in Wellington at the big
Yeah.
library, the Belfast library here in
Yes.
Christchurch.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found it because I was using something from it to figure out how to make a certain cable. Now, the knitted cable source book is interesting because it teaches you, it is a 3-piece book basically. It teaches you how to build your own cables and what all of the terms for each little piece of a cable are called. It teaches you B, how to do this thing she calls the stockinette stitch equivalency system. So Nora has actually figured out how to calculate how to take a cable pattern set over a number of stitches and directly translate that onto a piece of plain stockinette. So if you had a sweater that had a plain stockinette dimension and you wanted to transpose a cable onto it, the number of stitches needed will increase or decrease slightly depending on the cable. And there is actually a consistent way to calculate that. And it's all taught in this book. It's very incredible. It is the perfect companion for doing what Marie and I are talking about here today, which is either taking something that's highly complex and simplifying it so you get that beautiful shape with all of those gorgeous details, or doing the reverse, or somewhere in the middle, right? You know, you can take these great basic shapes as a launching off point, or you can take these complex patterns and scale them back so that you're working in simpler stitch patterns that you can manage.
Yeah. And I mean, so a lot of people will actually have something. Oh, is that the back of it? That's the back of it. Let's turn around the front, Marie, shall we? So a lot of us will have something like this at home. So this is the Harmony Guide. I mean, you know, these, I picked this one up actually at an op shop. So this one has got a lot of the basic Aran stitches. It's more extensive than a standard dictionary. And what I love about this one is that it will actually work. I'm just going to put Nora's book down for a second. Is that it also often it has a whole section on throwing together combinations.
Yes,
of different ones,
so beautiful.
Doing exactly what you were talking about. So I mean, you start from sort of basics like this, but see, that's where Nora is really intriguing, because she will take those shapes in a knitting nature. And I'm just going to, and in fact I'll do the first one, because the first one, so in the first book she starts out with what is really a very, very simple starred motif on an asymmetrical sweater. Now, I mean, that sort of sweater, what I love about stuff like this is that it's very, very current. I mean, this particular one is knitted in a bulky yarn, so you could actually do this in Southland bulky, no trouble whatsoever. It would be really beautiful. This particular one is sort of done all in one large piece, but it's not done in the round. So
yeah, that's the thing about her. She is a big fan of seamless construction, but not a big fan of knitting in the round.
No, and so for all of those out there, because there are still a lot of knitters that don't like knitting in the round, Nora is your girl. She is your go-to girl, because she will, and she provides those sorts of schematics. Like this is another one that I pulled out. I actually think I'll probably do this, particularly now, because I mean those wider designs.
Oh yeah.
Have become incredibly popular. Now that particular one there is done in a twist on twist DK. Well, I mean, that's got, for me, orb written all over it. It's
you could do that up in Bandit would be
fantastic.
Bandit
would be amazing. And in fact, another one a bit further along here, I was just like, oh, that is just so Bandit. Where is it? I did actually even color code these to make these easy to find, but you know. Oh no, this one here. No, it wasn't Bandit. This one here for me. She's exploring shapes across a yoke, just in a basic sweater, but across the top of the yoke. And I'm going to hold that up to the camera. Can they see that?
Oh, yes, which is reminiscent of the Mason-Dixon field guide that she then,
yeah,
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, and it's utterly stunning. Now that, and she's using, now that is, that in Bohemia worsted
would be fantastic.
Utterly sublime. Utterly sublime. So there are so many different ones in here, and there's several. There was, oh gosh, I could go on forever and forever and forever in a day. This is the other one I wanted to show.
That's the problem.
This particular one is quite reminiscent. You can sort of see, because the stag's head that you've done is quite
Yes.
reminiscent to that
Yes, it is.
travel with the cable.
So that's from her OG.
Yeah.
She calls those cable types OG, OGEE is the spelling
Yes.
of them. And yeah, she has the most fantastically. There are lots of very skilled designers at using cables out there. I think when we talk about this, Thea Coleman comes
Yeah.
to mind. Emily Green, who is a personal friend, side note. So, I do think a little highly of her than I should. Hiroko Payne also comes to mind as someone who's really skillfully implemented cables on that Sode cardigan that covered Lina issue 6. They all kind of come to mind, but there is no one. Irina Anakineva as well comes to my mind, at least. There's no one out there who has the both breadth and depth of cables that Nora Gone has, and who has figured out how to really create shapes, not just make cable patterns. So if we think of cable patterns as kind of the traditional ropes and braids and twists, which are all very beautiful, it is the morphing of those into a million different shapes and complex detail that she really manages, both in tiny, tiny, small scale, like lace weight cables that she's done, all the way up to massive, 12 ply, 8x8 cables. And they all turn out so interesting. And lately, her fixation has been on reversible cables, which, like, mind-boggling.
Yeah, I love reversible cables. I've got a friend who's right into them, and I just think they're incredibly incredibly
cool.
clever. And she also, I mean, if you have a look at her, I've just popped her Ravelry design page up, as well as the source for the Knitting Nature book. I mean, something like 970 published patterns. I mean, the woman is an absolute machine, how she can get these out. So in terms of sort of stitch dictionaries and where things are moving, I mean obviously knitting is fashion and things move on, and there's been a lot of movement back to the traditional color works, the traditional stitch patterns, all of those sorts of things. And you and I pulled this book up last.
I am not going to lie. Now, I mean, there have been some discussions going on about the fact that designers use stitch dictionaries. We just need to clarify this and be upfront about it. If you're out there thinking about starting to design, do credit where you got the design stitch dictionary from. But that particular one is an endless bloody resource. There are more cables and lace pattern. Like, how? How does this happen? Who has the mind to come up with this? You know what I mean? It is absolutely
mind-blowing.
Yeah, there is nothing in that stitch dictionary that I do not find like just mesmerizing to look at.
Yeah.
And it's every single page. And she also does an incredible job of showing people how to put her stitches together to build big panels. And he has a few projects in that one too, right? To show you how to deploy the cables.
Yes. So
or is that in the later edition?
She even also, what she will also do, she covers off. So this is, I mean, it's quite incredible. So she pulls combinations together, but she even also covers off yokes.
Yeah.
To actually add the increasing in, and she'll even, and edgings, and
this is very much in that Japanese tradition of, having the knitting skills yourself as a knitter to make your own garments.
Yeah. And this is why I particularly bought this book. I mean, other than the fact that it's a work of art, I bought it because I do exactly that. I mean, I'll have a basic template, and then I will often trawl through and find some color work with some cabling or whatever it is that catches my fancy, and then that's what I will do. And this is what I love about this, because you have so many wonderful panels, and you can either do them as a panel, but if you've got a basic template for something, there is absolutely no reason why you aren't able to actually translate that across into a piece of fabric and actually do that relatively easily. And a lot of the stuff that she has done here too, a lot of the twisting that she has done, there isn't a huge amount. The travels with it, and that would probably be some of them that are more traveled than others, And what I mean by traveled is what Ethan was talking about. Most cables, most of the cables that she uses in here, you're only ever traveling no more than 2 stitches.
Stitches at a time,
Which
yes.
then means from a distortion perspective, the distortion is minimized. So then if you're wanting to translate this stitch pattern onto a plain piece of
Bigger
stocking
garbage.
stitch, it's the mathematics in that is, you know,
Much simpler.
much simpler. I mean, you know, look at that. Imagine that at the bottom of a sweetheart neckline.
So beautiful. Absolutely, just
stunning. So I'm just going to hold this back up. I mean, I bought this actually when I was away in the US. Would you believe? I picked this up when I picked this up at Barnes and Noble, I think. It was Barnes and Noble, and it was in a clearance bin. I couldn't believe it. I was like, phew.
I have my copy digitally because I was living between 2 countries for a while, as some of you know. I highly, highly recommend the Japanese Knitting Bible.
Yeah.
It is just endlessly useful, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's been around for a few years. So I can see it. So I've only just picked mine up. But so hold on, let me just jump in.
The very first publishing is quite a while ago.
Yeah,
it was published
originally. She's got a lot of stuff there. So the original, I mean, she's been publishing since the late 90s.
Yes.
And this particular one is, I think, oh gosh, I don't know what version it's on, but it's certainly. Oh, here we go. Let's look at the back. It's at the back in this particular publication. So this one is 2015, first printing. And the English translation 2017. So it's been around a few years now.
Yes. What are some of the other ones? So if we're talking about modern-ish stitch dictionaries and modern approaches to stuff, a few years ago, Anna Maltz came out with the incredible book Marlisle. This is a really cool book because, especially in this time where we're at home with our stashes, and some of these patterns or techniques are available as single patterns. Again, it's Anna Maltz. She's super fun. This one is great because you're using more than one strand of yarn at a time. So if you are looking to make a larger project, like this beautiful midstream pullover, but you do not have everything that you need, as in you are concerned you won't have enough of one color, this is kind of a great answer. It also has lovely smaller patterns in it and different ways to build marled Fair Isle techniques. So what this is doing is combining the ideas of marl, which is what we have going on here, holding 2 strands of different colored yarn together, with that traditional color work approach from the Fair Isle thing. And we have talked quite a bit about seamless construction. Now, there are as many different ways to make a sweater seamlessly as there are to knit a sweater, period, right? But I am a huge fan of Osha Tricosa's work in the ziggurat method. Now, this is her entire book, which contains the complete set of instructions for doing her ziggurats, as well as 16 patterns. You can get her ziggurat patterns individually on Ravelry, and she has many more now, and other people have licensed and used Osha's method. But if you are someone who has struggled to get a precise fit from a top-down sweater, or do not find that they have a great structure, I highly recommend her work. Now, because we are in a situation where it is more challenging to get things, that's one of the reasons I'm recommending Osha here, because you can get her individual patterns.
Yeah, just popped her designer page up on Rav.
Oh, thank you. Now, what is great here is while you're working through her things, it will teach you how to do all sorts of different techniques, like ziggurat steps, cast on, picking up stitches, bind offs, increases, decreases, short rows, button bands, details, double knitted detail, tucks, and pockets. She has, as many designs as the day is long, beautiful cardigans that are knit seamlessly from the top down, incredible pullovers, and really thoughtful suggestions in her patterns of how to make things work for different bodies. You can see here that she shows her garments on a variety of different body sizes throughout. So you can really get a clear picture of any body at any size of how you are going to look in these beautiful designs. I love her work. I genuinely look up to her as someone in this industry who is really thoughtful and really goes a long way. And she really thinks about the woman who is going to wear her garments.
Yeah.
And that is a big thing for me. I find that there are a lot of designers who release beautiful looking patterns, but they don't seem to have thought about how a woman is really going to wear her garment. And for a lot of us now, these hand knitted garments are returning back to being staples of our wardrobe. I wear mine all the time, and I know you do as well, obviously,
Yeah.
and so does Deb. So these patterns and the fact that you can get something that is something you can wear to the office or something you can throw on to go to gardening, or it has a pattern for everybody and they are built for every single body. So that is my big shout out to OSHA today.
While you do that, Amy's just asked, does this book, and I'm assuming you're meaning this one, Amy, have decreasing you can use for a hat? Well, it does actually have this yoke section here. So even though yoking is increasing, it doesn't mean all hats don't have to be knitted from the brim to the top. You can knit your hat from the top down to your brim. So the short answer to that is yes.
Yes, and if you are going to do that, look up the good old lace buttonhole cast on. You cast on using a type of I-cord or using a crochet circle. It will save you a lot of time.
Yeah, and
you don't have to fight at the beginning.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've knit a couple. I've got one hat pattern that I've done, which is an Isolde, and it's cabled, and it's from the top down. And so, of course, you start it with the double point.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. Isolde has designed many things. Isolde has designed many things that I have given up on halfway through because I've been like, nope.
Yeah.
No.
What's and I think the next book you've got. I think we've both got a copy of that, haven't you? Yeah.
We both have it. We both have it. Knitting on the Edge by Nikki Epstein. 2 different editions here.
Yeah, you've got hard. I mean, I've only got.
I've got the hard copy. I actually raided Deb's library this morning, everyone. I'm not going to lie. I have sworn by this for years, and I thought this was published much earlier than I think it really was. Let us figure this one out.
Because she had a real run. She published a whole heap of stuff in a big, long...
yes, because she has... There's one that comes directly after this.
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
If I remember correctly, I believe she worked doing editing in the industry for Vogue for a while.
She's got also another wonderful book, which unfortunately is held hostage at the shop. I think it's called, it's either Knitting Around the World or Knitting on Top of the World. And it's an entire book around looking at the knitting traditions, but also the styles and influences of different knitted cultures and how that translates into modern fashion and design and knitting.
So cool.
It is a wonderful book. I have that one at work and I just adore it. And that's one of hers as well.
No, totally. So talking about, ways to approach things for modifying a basic garment pattern.
Yeah.
Her whole beginning rib section is many, many pages long. It includes so many different ways to utilize different types of stitches that you might not have previously thought of as edging a garment stitch. That adds like a lot of dimension. If you're making a really simple pullover for a woman or a man, someone who isn't a big fan of lots of detail everywhere, you can add a big punch of beauty right around the cuffs and hem just by doing a more complex ribbing that doesn't at all detract from the function of the garment. Now,
and if you're looking for a good basic sweater, Libby Johnson has her Gingerbread, which is a wonderful basic sweater with this beautiful ribbing detail. Well, if you already own that sweater, because Libby has a really good construction technique that she uses, she's gone and developed this set and sleeve the technique that she has, which means that the shoulder fit in her garments
really good.
Is really, really
she uses that again on the pearl sweater, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and it's something that is very much a feature from her. And that particular sweater, I know a number of you have that sweater in your libraries. Well, this edging dictionary is perfect, because it means that if you want to actually change out the triangular sort of traveling detail that she has, well, you can. You just alter it to one of these others, but everything else remains the same. You still get all the instruction for the beautiful fit-in shoulders and all of those sorts of things. So it's about taking the resources that you already have and actually upscaling them using these resources.
And the point of this particular book, everyone, is all of the edgings that are included in here are things that are decorative and functional. The way that they are utilized stops things from curling. So, we all know if you knit plain stockinette right to the edge, it curls, as it's going to do. So this is a perfect set of different instructions with lots of different techniques, including some ones that are, possibly a little difficult to imagine applying, like some of the aggressive ruffles, but I promise there is a place for those. Some of the fringed loop. Ooh, so much fringe, girl. If you're looking for that Wild West aesthetic, there are a million different ones out there. But yes, I absolutely love this one. And I did grab from Deb's library. Now, as all of you probably know, I am not much / at all of a crocheter, but I know that you had the wonderful Sophia on to do some crocheting stuff. What I just grabbed quickly from Deb's shelf, because it grabs my eye every time I look at this, is the 200 Crochet Blocks book. Now, what's great about this one is if you're at home and looking to do a kind of scrappy stash busting project like we've been talking about, this one has an end. And I mean, like, if you get through 200 blocks during this time, my hat is off to you. You know what? My pants are off to you as well. We'll just but this is an incredible book because it has so many different, and they're not just variations, they are each completely unique. And if you are a crocheter of some moderate skill, I believe you could easily go through this and put together a stunning crochet sampler blanket that would really show off lots of different colors and lots of different techniques. I am just absolutely, as always, astonished by the ingenuity of crochet designers and crochet stitch patterns. It is mind-boggling to me because I just look at it and go, how on earth did you do that?
Yeah, and there's also flexibility. Sophia and I talked about because you're only ever dealing with, and this is in standard crochet, not Tunisian, but in standard crochet, you're only ever working with one stitch at a time usually. So because that is the case, you have this incredible flexibility, not only to actually go off in any direction in which you choose, but also you're able to change and switch out colors incredibly easily, vastly more easily than what you can in knitting, because obviously knitting is a linear approach. So there are certain sort of flexibilities with crochet that I have to admit I do love, and one, and you have the simplicity of something like this, which gives you this wonderful, beautiful symmetrical fabric, nice and warm and cozy, and it's just really, really easy.
You can talk into it, use it as a pencil case. It's got endless uses.
Yeah, exactly. And this was, and I did this because I started this while we were doing the chat, and I did it just to show people that that's one stitch, including chain, and the very first thing that I crocheted for the longest time after I came back to it was something like this for a sunglass case, and it just gets you back into the habit of holding your hook. I went back through when I relearned, because I learned when I was 4 actually, and you forget. I think it was the Peyton's Learn to Crochet book, which was around years ago, and I just sat there with the book and went through and said, oh, okay, that's right. There is a flexibility there. The other thing that crochet is fantastic for is going and doing different shapes and creating shapes really, really easily, and that sort of segues nicely into what you guys have been doing over on the Outlaw layer with scrappy tea cozies, and I have seen some wonderful scrappy tea cozies.
I'm going to borrow Deb's project because I have still not started my tea cozy.
Oh, mine doesn't look like anything yet.
You know, but it is more than what I have. So Deb is showing off here the beginning of the circular method of construction for building a tea cozy.
Which, if you want to know,
I completely just making it up as I go along because
there's nothing wrong with it. And Sophia actually covered off doing circles in crochet, the most basic sort of fractal circle, in the video that we did. So yeah, so
yes. So, you know, the great other thing, as you're saying about creating shapes in crochet, that I have seen before is, I don't know if everyone remembers when that yarn bombing thing became very popular, where people were going out and like wrapping trees and telephone poles and knitting, which, I mean, you know, sure, cool, that's a thing. I've never participated, very busy making myself garments. But what crochet always reminds me of is, because you're building the shape, as you said, stitch by stitch as you go in that non-linear fashion, you can really make things that mold to different shapes. And I have looked at, I swear, a million tea cozy patterns now over the last 2 weeks, trying to figure out which one I might actually make, be able to make. They're two very different things, folks. Because I'm always like, ooh, I love that one. And they're like, and you do this with cobweb yarn doing quadruple crochet or some nonsense. And I'm like, well, that's never going to happen. But crochet does give you that incredible ability to use lots of different things in one project and to really create the shape that you're aiming for. I've always said that crochet is more improvisational than knitting. You know, with crochet, I think attaining mastery of crochet, because there are so many different stitches built so many different ways, is actually much harder than attaining mastery in knitting.
But you can achieve a lot more. You can learn the basic stitches.
Exactly.
You achieve a lot more much sooner. Yeah,
that's the thing. Where knitting is entirely knitting and purling, and that's pretty much it at the end of the day. Crochet is endlessly, you're only limited by your imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've gone and pulled off, I literally whipped it off the teapot at home. So this is
you
can see, the most basic tea cozy in the world. It is 2 squares. That's double knitted yarn. As you can see, I've knitted it on the bias just to make it look a little bit interesting. And when I seamed it with a smaller hole at one side, bigger hole at the other. I've got a stainless steel teapot, thrown a couple of flowers on the top, and that has been, and you can even see the tea stains on that side. That has been our tea cozy for years. But what I love about, whether it be crochet, so that one's knitted, and that's the flowers they're knitted, right? But you can actually see these are the same flowers crocheted. So
is that a crocheted flower crown?
It isn't. It does. Every girl, and in fact, I need to fix it because it's broken. Every girl requires a crochet flower crown. This is the Frida crown by Alia Bland, and or Little Bee Crochet. So this is her design here.
I love it.
I know. And, crochet. So in terms of embellishment, even if you were to do just the most simple covering, you can embellish. You know,
whip off a few flowers.
Basic tea cozies are all about the embellishment.
Yeah, amazing. Well,
we've done an hour. We need to stop talking.
Oh my goodness!
I know, and I've just said my youngest everyone around because it's midday. He'll be hungry. He'll be wanting to be fed. You know, little boys, they rule by their stomachs. So thank you.
Big boys are too.
Everyone has been so chatty today too. Louise is available from libraries.
Yes.
So I've popped up a lot of the links, and there'll be access, as Ethan said, a lot of those books are available around local libraries. On Ravelry, if the book is listed in Ravelry, it will actually give you a link to a search that you can go and see whether there's a library in your area that carries it. So I would strongly suggest that
as always, check Ravelry first. They have built an incredible
check a local library, and then that way it saves you some money. What have we got here? No, everyone else is. Oh, there we go. Well, I think that's us. Okay. I want to go and eat something because I'm hungry, and I want to get the sleep knocked off. We will catch up again next week.
We'll see you next week.
And until then, I'll be back, of course, again tomorrow. And hopefully I can show you a bit more progress on my Rambler sweater. But until then, have a great Saturday. Enjoy yourselves. And I'll see you again then. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.